Yo guys, what is going on? JPS back for another video, and today we're going to be reacting to why do Europeans dislike America so much. So off the bat, that title is a huge generalization. However, I believe there is some truth to it, especially after my experiences going to Europe for a month. I was in Britain for 2 weeks, I was in Germany for 2 weeks, and particularly in Berlin, there were a lot of Europeans who weren't Germans, of course, a lot of tourists. And I found myself saying the same things to them when we would first meet each other to break the ice. I would have to preface things by saying I don't have guns. I am against our healthcare system. I'm against our presidents. I am, like before the conversation even started, or even during the conversation, it would always turn into those things would always end up being brought up. And I felt like if I didn't say those things, not that there isn't truth to them, but if I didn't say those things, or if I didn't believe those things, then I felt the conversation would get hostile or would be immediately shut down. So I know there's definitely some valid reasons why Europeans may dislike Americans. And I'm not saying that Americans don't dislike Europeans. The point of the video is to get to the bottom of that, because this has really piqued my interest since I experienced some hate towards myself just off the basis of my nationality. So let's get right into this. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. Please watch the whole video before commenting. Let's get it.
I'm asking questions about how Europeans see Americans.
I think it's a third world country with a lot of money. Very negative.
Very negative.
Yeah, I don't see anything positive about America.
I think they're a bit stupid. American TikTokers, they earn too much money with what they do. Like in Belgium, we have to work for our money and they just make videos and that's it.
Oh my God.
You know, I might be completely wrong about this, but I think it was a little bit cooler to be American when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've lived in Europe for several years now, and look, I've romanticized this continent quite a bit. I really like living here. But there's a funny feeling that I cannot shake, and I think it has to do with how Europeans view Americans, or how Europeans view me when they discover that I'm American. And it's not entirely positive. This feeling has not gone away even though I've been here for a few years now. And it's not hatred, it's more like negative undertones, offhand comments or jokes that are made, and it makes me feel not very cool.
Bro, that is the best. Like if he, oh my God, he literally nailed it on the head. I felt the exact same way. Exactly.
And by the way, I recognize not all Europeans dislike Americans. That is a massive generalization. But I'm bringing this up because it's been enough of a trend for me to confidently talk about this as something that's really happening in the world. I don't think it's just in my head. It just seems like when it comes to Europeans' view of Americans, there's a lot to dislike. I don't necessarily entirely disagree. I have plenty of my own criticisms about the United States and the way of life over there. And I think that all places, all societies merit criticism. That's how we get better. So this applies to everyone. But there's something deeper going on here that I want to explore. On a personal level, my own identity as an American, but also the identity of Americans on the global stage. We don't live in a bubble, and it turns out the whole world has opinions about us. Now, I have my own theories about what's going on here, but I thought I'd get to the root of the matter and ask Europeans themselves.
It makes me a little bit nervous talking to strangers, but I'm just gonna go for it. What are the stereotypes?
That's a good question.
Bah moi, quand je pense aux Américains, je pense à la bouffe et tout.
Dans quel sens? Le fast-food?
Ouais,
Ok.
parce que McDo. Ouais.
McDo?
Ouais,
ok.
hamburger et tout.
Mais les Français adorent McDo.
Oui, bah, on y était il y a 2 minutes.
Donc c'est pas forcément négatif ça?
Non,
Ah non.
Ok.
Mais c'est l'image.
Actually, I like Americans because they are like very chilled. America is like so expensive for good food. Like for like fruits and all this fresh stuff, it's like so expensive.
J'ai deux visions un peu.
Ok.
J'ai la version où ils sont trop cool et tout, et la version vraiment le beauf américain.
Do you think the stereotypes about Americans are true?
Kind of. I have a classmate that is American, and we are talking like about our traditional foods. And the American was like, my typical food is hamburger, ice cream like the McDonald's one, and we are like, oh, so McDonald's is your typical food. She was like, yeah, kind of.
Could I just take a couple minutes to ask you a couple questions? It's okay if you don't have time, it's fine. Okay, all good. Have a nice day. The Americans don't have time for me. that's kind of funny. Would you mind if I asked you a couple questions?
Yeah. Polarized. Extremely polarized.
Yeah. More than the Netherlands.
Much more.
Feel younger people feel the same way or differently about American?
I think even stronger.
Even stronger?
I think they...
Bro, I met some Dutch people on the trip while I was in Berlin, and they were very critical of Americans, like very critical of me as well. Ryan was there with me. He can vouch for me, but it felt like whenever everything I was saying was under like this huge lens of criticism. Like I felt like they were twisting my words, and I'm not saying it wasn't a good interaction, but like, guys, I don't know what it was, but I'm telling you, some of the Dutch people I met on the trip were, and I'm not going to say it, I still have an open mind on Dutch people, like, of course, but this is just one thing with the Dutch people, like how they view Americans. It wasn't the best on the trip, I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Yeah, the older people, I feel maybe thinking of the World War II and World War One, in which the Americans did a very good job by helping, because Europe was not doing very well.
Yeah.
Ils connaissent que ce qui se passe dans leur pays.
Parce que enfermés sur eux-mêmes.
Enfermés sur eux-mêmes.
C'est-à-dire que c'est pas contre eux, mais qu'ils s'intéressent pas trop aux autres pays.
They know about their own country, but not about like other stuff in the world. They're overrated.
They're overrated. How? Like they receive too much attention?
Yes. Too much hype.
Too much
on
hype.
the internet.
Are you also German?
Yes, I am.
And in Germany, you feel like German people have a positive view of Americans? Or
Not really.
no? Okay, so more negative.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you feel that there's been a change at all in terms of how Americans are viewed, like in the last 10, 15 years?
I think so, yes. Especially due to the Trump and the Tea Party things happening. It got more polarized, and that made it more negative in my view.
There's more that I'd like to say about why I believe this dynamic is happening, why Europeans see Americans in this way. But before I do, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is BetterHelp. And look, sign up, support you. All right, time for me to share some of my own personal theories here. Here's why I think it was maybe a little bit cooler to be American in the past. I was born in the 90s, maybe like some of you. And back in the 90s, it's not like the United States, or the world for that matter, didn't have its problems. It definitely did. You're not gonna get any of that classic, nostalgic, those were the days kind of thing from me. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that back in the 90s, the internet had not yet completely taken over our lives like it has now. And in my view, the internet feels like it's taken whatever problems already existed and made them bigger and louder. That might actually be what the internet is best at, the fast transmission of ideas and information, which in turn amplifies them. And there's another thing that the internet is really good at, which is that it is a canvas for less curated or filtered versions of that information or ideas. There are less gatekeepers, so anyone can say anything. My theory is that as time has gone on, and as the internet has played a bigger and bigger role in our lives, the world has been exposed to a less curated version of the United States. You know, you had movies and TV and pop music reaching the entire world, but it wasn't like it is today with social media and even the news reaching so many more people. Nowadays, it feels like you cannot escape the news about the mass shootings that are constantly happening in the US or the insane election cycles. I think in some ways, the internet might have taken away some of our innocence, right? Some of our naivete. As a result, even more curated versions of culture, like the highly produced TV shows and movies, are reflecting the things that we're seeing. The unintelligent or simple American is a very believable archetype, and not a new one. You've got at least one, and often more than one character that perfectly fits that archetype in pretty much all American sitcoms, from Friends to How I Met Your Mother. And there are plenty of shows that play off of this very intentionally. I think of South Park and Family Guy and The Simpsons. And internationally, the contrast is even more stark. And it might just be me, but it does feel like the perception of Americans is deteriorating. I mean, I'm thinking about shows like Emily in Paris or The White Lotus. The White Lotus in particular blew me away because it felt so believable and oftentimes in a very depressing way. Clearly, Americans are not known for being refined or in touch with reality. This is particularly true of wealthy Americans. And why wouldn't Europeans feel this way? We are famously terrible at learning foreign languages. To many, we're seen as living in our own giant bubble.
A lot of people beforehand used to think,
yo, I gotta say, bro, Nathaniel Drew, make sure you guys sub to him. Like, this video it's like taking my thoughts and putting them into coherent sentences that I otherwise would not have been able to express. Like, this is like exactly how I feel. It's so true. But the thing is, there's downsides with all this because we're not as one-dimensional as many people think. And you can't group almost 400 million people into a stereotypical American. Do some of the stereotypes have truth to them? Of course. Otherwise, they wouldn't be stereotypes. But I think, like, if you're looking at some of these interviews, some of the things that these Europeans being interviewed are saying is like you're grouping, like, in some instances that could be more judgmental than some of the things that Americans get backlash for say. Like, literally, but I get it. That's the thing. You can understand where people are coming from because the internet, honestly, sometimes I think, because people are like, oh, it's a balance. Like, the internet is a force for good, but with it comes equal downsides. Honestly, sometimes maybe it's the cynic in me, but I don't think that the downsides are equal. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Oh my God.
I think like the US was like very cool and this really lovely place to go to, but I feel like everyone just thinks it's dangerous and that they don't care about their citizens. There's all these shootings going on, like their healthcare is horrible, their schooling's horrible.
So there's been a change.
I think it's always been like that. I think there's a change now because like social media is is making it more apparent.
America used to be, like the American dream, like a lot of them used to be a big thing. Like gun crime is getting like publicized a lot more, so I think like the narrative is changing a little bit.
Je vois l'Amérique comme une grande puissance mondiale et je les vois comme des capitalistes. En fait, si t'as de l'argent, tu vis bien, mais si t'as pas d'argent, y a personne pour t'aider. Marche ou crève.
In France, we say the Americans are big and fat, but I love America with the friends, the salary friends.
Donc il y a des côtés positifs et des côtés négatifs.
Ouais, c'est ça exactement. Globalement, les gens pensent ça, mais en même temps, tout le monde va aller à New York et tout le monde va aller aux États-Unis.
Ouais, d'accord, ok.
C'est ça en fait, ouais. Ils ont des préjugés, mais en même temps, c'est quand même un rêve d'y aller.
J'étais absolument ulcérée quand Trump était au pouvoir. De voir le comportement de cet homme, ça donne pas envie d'aller forcément dans ces conditions-là. Le fait que les gens soient très très armés, j'ai l'impression que je me sentirais pas en sécurité.
Most people love Canadians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you clarify you're Canadian, they're like,
yeah. We're like, oh, Canada, where are you from?
Listen, I could pass with the Canadian accent, guys. For my European travel purposes, I will now be from Vancouver. There we go. I'm Canadian. It is true though. I don't hear anyone talking crap about Canada because they're so damn friendly. How could you hate Canadians?
Canada. For me, it's like a lot about the money. Like the times I went to New York, and it's like, winners and losers, and you gotta make it, and you gotta make loads of money, and la 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 la, and then like if you don't have money, you're like basically fucked. I would say extremes.
Extremes.
It's like an extreme, country, like very very rich, very very poor.
Right.
Eat very much, eat very 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 healthy, like extreme healthy, extreme, like XXXL, McDonald's, whatever.
Where are you from?
England.
Perfect. So I'm doing a video on Europeans' view of Americans.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any opinions about that.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay.
We're from Europe. No, we're not. We left the EU.
Next.
Do you feel like it's a more positive or a negative view of Americans?
I'd say negative. I feel like there's a lot going on there that's just a bit backwards.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we need to move along.
Yeah.
All the abortion laws coming in.
So politically.
And, like all the gun crimes, things like that. Like I imagine like most of the country is absolutely lovely, but there's some of the morals that are just a little bit off.
Okay.
For me, so I struggle with that.
I agree, but I do think you all like proper chatty and that, and you're really energetic.
Yeah.
So it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
But I
lovely
also
to
agree
meet
with that as well.
Yeah.
It's lovely to meet Americans.
Yeah.
Love meeting Americans.
Okay, so why?
Bro, I really like that take right there, honestly. At first, I was going to judge her for the whole European Union comment, because that's a different thing, but whatever. That's why you can't judge off the bat. Everyone makes mistakes, but listen, in the Brits, it goes both ways. Brits and Americans always have this kind of intrinsic connection, but we both are like, nah, the British are a bit backwards, and then the Brits will be like, Americans are a bit backwards. It's how it always goes. I love it.
Am I so interested in this topic? Well, over the last few years, I have shared my journey moving abroad and looking for a home. Because that home is not the United States. I just don't feel connected to that country. Not as a home, even though I'm coming to realize that it did shape me in many ways. I'm just trying to find my place, but as I've said before, different people will treat you in different ways based off of how they perceive you. The first time I experienced this was during my high school exchange in France when I was 16 years old. Obama was president, and regardless of your personal political opinions or feelings, he was seen in a generally positive light abroad. So in a weird way, even though I was not responsible for electing him, I wasn't even of age to vote, that scored me some cool points. And then on top of it, 16-year-old French kids living in a small town in the west of France thought it was cool that I rode a yellow bus to school and that I had my own personal locker in the United States. So I was benefiting from all these things that I didn't really control at all. Then I get to Argentina a few years later, and I see what it's like to be on the flip side, where the general sentiment was more negative. I'm generalizing here, but there's a bit of an anti-American streak in Argentina. And I think this comes down to the image that the United States has of being a bit of a bully. I mean, Che Guevara is a bit of an anti-American, anti-capitalist symbol, right? So that was a very different experience, and now I'm back in Europe, and I've been here for a while, and the perception has changed yet again.
90% of the Dutchmen think Trump is quite strange.
Yeah.
They think Republicans are also quite strange. And that Americans are very Puritan.
This might just be me, but I do feel like the image of Americans has deteriorated a little bit over the last 10 years. That might come down to the government that's currently in power. It might come down to social media. This is a very complex thing, so I can't point to.
I think it's a perfect combination of the both. You don't have to point to either of them. If you ask Europeans, and this is on a trip I asked them, I was like, what is the view? I was really curious. What is the general consensus on America? And almost like just overwhelmingly people were like, when Trump got in power, the view of Americans deteriorated because Americans are the ones who elected Trump into power. So it's not... People are mad about Trump, but they're also mad about the fact that Trump was president. So it's like he's definitely on the money with what he's saying for sure. It's because I've experienced
to a single reason, but it's definitely a feeling that's there. Now, on a personal level, before I realized that this was going on, I was kind of unintentionally overcompensating. I felt like I needed to show that I wasn't the out-of-touch American in Europe. And the same thing happened to me in Argentina, where I was speaking with as much slang as I possibly could that I picked up over there, even when it was just way too much, when it was inappropriate. Que zarpado, boludo, está re piola, pibe, mal. Why was I acting like that? Was there a deeper need within me to be accepted by the people that I am surrounded by? To me, it's a little bit cringy to behave that way because it's overcompensating for something, which in this case was the identity that people were associating with me. Whatever it was, the out of touch, stupid American, whatever it might be. But that's actually a me problem, not a problem with the world. I've come to realize that people can think whatever they want about you. It doesn't change who you are. If people see me as yet another dumb American, it doesn't mean that's true. And also, it doesn't mean all Americans are that way. I think we all know this. We all know that individuals don't necessarily follow the stereotypes, but it's also how people operate in a world of 8 billion people. I can't blame people for having formulated an idea about the place that I'm from, considering how much culture is exported from that place. A part of me used to try to distance myself as much as possible from anything and everything American, but the truth is that at least some part of me, some piece of me, has been influenced by my upbringing there. There are a lot of things I don't like, but there are some things for Americans. I would be curious to hear, because this is a giant open-ended topic, and I invite all different opinions and perspectives on this. It's just something I love to explore. Also, apologies to all Latin Americans and Canadians who are Americans in their own right. I have decided to use that word in this video because there isn't really another word that has been widely adopted to still speak of the people of the United States. So I just used it for simplicity, and I hope that you can forgive me. Thank you so much for watching.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Why was that video so good, bro? I was not... That might be one of the highest quality reaction videos we have ever done. I was not ready for that. He killed it, and it's facts. United States of America, what about North America, South America, Central America? And that's the thing about Europe. Especially, everyone calls it America. Everyone calls it Americans. You guys got to realize, like, that's not the... It really isn't a proper term. When you look at it, like, it's like... Why are we calling this America when... You see what I'm saying? But that is a fact. I hadn't even thought about that. Well, of course I have thought about that, but it definitely leaves your mind because you're looking for the instant gratification when you're touring somewhere else. And you forget about the people who have to live permanently in your home country, who are received much more poorly than just Europeans thinking that your president isn't the best. So when you put it in perspective like that, it really isn't that bad. So I really appreciate that. That's a good way to stay grounded and to look at things. It's definitely, and the thing about that is, you can bring that into any conversation, but it's always good to think about things like that. So I feel like I resonated with almost everything he said in this video. Most Americans who have been to Europe probably would as well. Am I saying that Europeans are in the wrong for stereotyping Americans? And again, I'm stereotyping Europeans by saying Europeans are in the wrong, because there were a lot of very open-minded Europeans who actually loved Americans and threw out all the other stuff. So I think if we all just make an effort to not be as judgmental, and this is not for Europeans, but probably even, you could be even more for Americans, honestly, because we're just as judgmental, especially about Europeans. And the thing is, the people who are judgmental about Europe are the people who have never been to Europe. And I'm sure it goes both ways. So, easier said than done to get a transatlantic flight, but going to the place and actually experiencing it for yourself is the best way to break through some of these stereotypes, because I did that within my own head going to Germany. Of course, I had preconceived notions of how it was going to be, of how Germans were going to act, of how I would be received. But much of that ended up not being true. And again, I'm going to have some more videos breaking down what I experienced in my travels. I know you guys already saw the shocks video, which I really enjoyed making. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching that. If you haven't, make sure you check it out. I made a video about shocks from visiting Germany. This is my first time there. But other than that, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this. This is a really interesting video. I'm sure a lot of dialogue will be sparked in the comments. Try and remain civil. See how that goes. And, no, I'm just kidding. You guys usually are pretty civil, so I appreciate y'all. And yeah, that's about all I gotta say. Consider hitting the like button and subscribe as well, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.